Hi and welcome back to the channel. It's been nothing but rain the past couple of weeks, and even though I have astrodarkness, I haven't been able to capture that much data, so any new images with the Poseidon M Pro has to wait a little bit longer. In the meantime, I have a reprocessing video for you, and I think you will like all of the details I managed to squeeze out of SH2-155, the Cave Nebula. My name is Morten and you are watching Frost Astrophotography. In this video I'm going to reprocess the Cave Nebula, and I was surprised myself how much more details were hiding in the original data. So join me in PixInsight and we will take a look at the reprocessing. Let's get started with the reprocessing of SH2-155 or the Cave Nebula. This is 193 light frames in total, and that is 67HA, 6603 and 60 S2. Now these were taken back in the end of 2024 during 8 sessions in total, and I wasn't that happy with the result. I was at the time, but now I feel like I've lost a lot of details in the processing. So this is an attempt to see if I can't reveal more details in this image. And since we're also waiting for some better weather here up at 63 degrees north, we have to do something to occupy us with. These are stacked and drizzled 2x. Now these are with my old 294mm Pro camera, as the new camera, the Poseidon M Pro, is new for this season, and I've just started to gather data for the first object. You have to wait a little bit longer, and let's hope for clear weather. We're going to be starting off with the normal linear processing steps here. Nothing much and fancy. There are some small halos around the stars here in the O3, but I will remove all of the stars and stretch them individually, and that will hopefully take care of that. We might have to do some processing on these locations just to get rid of the halos. I started with a light crop like I normally do here, and then I moved on to the automated dynamic background extraction, and sometimes I also need to run through the gradient correction tool depending on how the frames are looking. This time I didn't really need to do that, so I moved on to the blur exterminator, and that of course helps this image a lot. Now this is H alpha, of course. I usually don't show all of the frames in the linear steps here. It is a little bit redundant, I would say, but after that the noise exterminator like I normally do, and then we can have a small comparison here between the first image that just had a dynamic crop and the last image in the linear processing steps. So you can see that we have a dramatic improvement here. It's mainly got to do with noise and the size of the stars here. Let's zoom in on an area and compare. You can see that we have a dramatic reduction in stars. We have improvement in sharpness. I would say on the non-stellar objects in the image, and we of course have a lot of improvement in regards to noise. Keep in mind this is also stacked 67 5-minute light frames. In total I'm having 16 hours of data from my bortle 4 zone. That helps dramatically, I would say, with noise. I also ran through a star exterminator here, giving me this starless version. Now this is just screen transfer stretched or screen stretched with STF. This is going to be stretched properly later using the scripts that I normally use. And the stars, we are stretching those with generalized hyperbolic stretch as usual. Set the local intensity up to maximum, and then you stretch until you are satisfied. I don't like the stars to overwhelm my image. You can create a little preview if you want on a bright star. Preferably do this on the O3 or S2 maybe. You can stretch until you start to see artifacts, and then you will bring it back depending on how big of a stars you want in this image. I don't want my stars to overwhelm the image, but I do want stars, and I do want to have a little bit of brightness on the stars here. So maybe something like that. Then you just close the preview and apply the stretch to all 3 filters. Then we are, of course, putting the stars together, but that will happen a little bit later on. This basically concludes the linear processing. Now we are stretching the 3 light frames, or the 3 master light frames, and that is the H alpha, S2 and O3. I have starless versions of those here. I normally try to use, if I do an STF on this one, you can see that it is fairly nice. If I remove that and use the script, the statistical stretch from SETI Astro that I really like, I'm just going to select the correct image. I will stretch it to 15 here and then 5. And then I will refresh my preview, and then I will execute the stretching. Now it is stretched. Basically, you don't need to if you don't want to, but if I kept it at this level, I would probably end up with an image looking like something like my old one. So I want to stretch this more. I want to stretch the data that is, the faint data that is out here in the peripherals, in the outskirts of the image here. You can do that with generalized hyperbolic stretch. You can watch my extensive tutorial if you want to know how you can use that in the best way. But you can also combine the statistical stretch with the IHDR script. You can set this to a low HDR, and you turn the intensity down a little bit, and you turn up the mask strength a little bit, I would say. And that will help to really protect the bright areas in the image that you really don't want to stretch more. It will be overblown. Now this takes a lot longer than the statistical stretch, but it is worth the wait. And of course you will do this for all 3 filters, not just the H-alpha that I'm showing you now. Now the script is finished, and you can see that you have a very big difference here now in stretching. We have really exposed areas out here, and the entire image shows that you basically have no background. It is all H-alpha data in this image. Very faint out here, yes, but there's still data here. And we obviously want to use that in the image. We also preserved this area. It's not overstretched here. It is around 0.8, 2, 3. It's not overblown. So this is a very good result. I wouldn't bother with GHS for this image, but it is a personal preference. These are the 3 starless versions here, stretched, and I have adjusted the black point just a little bit, and I also adjusted a little bit regarding to some of the brighter areas affected with stars here. So you had some areas up here that were very bright, or you can see residue of the stars that were removed, and of course you don't want that in the final image, so I have used clone stamp here to remove some of those areas. Or I haven't removed any data, I just simply dimmed them down a little bit. And in order to do that successfully, I would say you use the process clone stamp, but I usually always set a good size, 100 maybe. I increase the softness a lot, like at least 90%. And then I decrease the opacity a lot, down to like 10, 15%. And that will enable me to slightly decrease areas like this. If there's something that stands out, I don't want to copy an entire area from one other source area. I just want to slightly decrease the brightness of that area. So that is usually how I work with the clone stamp, and I find it a good tool, even if it's very easy to go overboard with it and do too much, and that will be visible in the end result there. Time for integration. Now this is the integrated SHO. It is simply SHO in RGB channels, and that produces an image looking like this. A lot of green here. It is a personal preference here also. I remove 80% of the green with SCNR, then I invert the image, and then I remove 100% of the green in inverted to reduce the magenta type colors that you have on some of the stars or some of the areas here in the image. So that will go from this one to the left here to this one on the right, where you have the beginnings of the traditional Hubble palette SHO. I adjusted the colors. I added colors filters here for cyan and blue, and then I opted to up the blue and the saturation and the vibrance for the areas that were identified as blue or cyan. I did the same for the yellow and red areas here, and I inserted more red. and increased the saturation and vibrance there as well, giving me a little bit of that more goldish orange blue look than the pale yellow look. I ran through some sharpening here. It is a very faint sharpening, but you can see a little bit of a difference there. Then I ran through some noise reduction. You can't really see much, but if you zoom in on the image here and then you compare the exact area, you can see that there has been a reduction in noise, and I actually use a noise exterminator again these days. I used to use TGV denoise, making masks and manipulating those masks, but I find that noise exterminator works again fairly good here and saves a lot of time. I added the synthetic luminance. Sometimes I use the H alpha. Sometimes I just extract the luminance here from this image. If I take out the luminance here, I renamed it to luminance. Then you make a mask. Let me just minimize those for a little bit. I make a range mask here to select just the central parts of the area, making sure that I don't apply it too much on the highlighted areas here. Then you make the mask. You apply the mask here to the synthetic luminance or the luminance you have extracted. You remove the mask so you don't have to, or so you can see what you're doing. And then you run through some local histogram equalization here. And that will improve sharpness and contrast. So I'm going to apply this. And you can see a little bit of difference before and after. It is a little bit sharper. And you apply 2 or 3 stages with different radius settings and limits here to really work on the bigger objects in the image and the smaller objects in the image separately. When you're happy with that, you can see that you have a sharper image with a little bit more contrast here. So then you remove the mask, and then you run through some extra sharpening on that image to really make these areas very sharp. What you can do now then is that you can use the LRGB combination tool here, and you take the old image, your synthetic luminance layer here, and since you specified the luminance here, you can drag this onto a target image. It will apply this synthetic luminance to that image. And you have gained a lot in contrast and sharpness for that image. And that is exactly the goal of adding the synthetic luminance. So we can select this area and we can compare the two here. And you can see that you have some extra sharpness here, and that is what we are after to make this image stand out, I would say. Then I usually use the script dark structure enhance, and I've done that for this image as well. Enhancing these dark structures, there's a lot of them in this image. So use that, and that basically concluded the non-linear phase, giving me a starless image that looks something like this. I made some final color adjustments also. We could bring up the first SHO integration and compare them here. So this is the starless that I'm using to integrate with my stars. And this is the original SHO integration, the very first one without any processing made to it. And you can see that you have a big difference here. Then, of course, I did what I always do with the stars. I integrate the SHO individually stretched stars. And when that is done, I run through the image solver script. And then I run through the spectrophotometric color calibration. And I calibrate the colors here to the point in space. So basically, I'm calling them synthetic RGB stars. I didn't invent that term, someone else did. I didn't invent this workflow as well. I just use it and find it very effective if you don't have RGB stars. Please consider, if you are using multiple cameras, make sure that you select the correct sensor type here in the QE curve. If you have changed your camera like I have recently, if you're opening up older images or older data, make sure that you switch back. The same goes for other tools as well. Let's say you use subframe selector. Then you will need to adjust here the subframe scale and the camera gain to get accurate readings here in this tool. And then I combined the stars with the starless, like I usually do with the pixel math. And I made some final adjustments to this. So let me open up the one that I have adjusted a little bit. This is the final result of SH2-155, the Cave Nebula. I have 16 hours of data, 193 light frames of SHO data with synthetic RGB stars, and now it's going to be interesting to compare this, of course, to the older version of the same object. So I'm going to open up here the last edit that I made of the Cave Nebula about 1 year ago. And here you have it. On the right here is the old version, the last edit that I made. And the difference here is that it was not sufficiently stretched, of course. You have lost a lot of data. I used SHO stars, so we can see that the stars aren't really color calibrated. You have a red star here, or red-ish. This one is too much white-blue-ish. And I can see improvement all around here, just starting with the number of details shown in the image. That is enough for me. And if we zoom in here on the center, you can see that there are so many things going on that I lost. The stars are so much better processed. I think that's also got to do with the Star Exterminator has gotten a lot better at extracting the stars here, giving them a more, maybe it's me also stretching the stars here, not using a super stretched star like that. Overall, I must say I'm very happy with the new version here. Let's hope we are getting some better weather up here so that I can continue on the first object with the new Poseidon M Pro camera. So stay tuned for that first image. Until then, let's just continue hoping for clear skies. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, if you like it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already doing so. Until the next video, I wish you have, unlike here, clear skies.